the might of the body, the will, all must be summoned, energized, and put in the service of country and people before you can have peace. The engine of peace is service. Service is the engine of peace. We must serve and we must be served. That's what Mr. Trawane is emphasizing. But the driving force of peace is the will. If you want to transform a human being into a slave, you must break his will. You must break the will of the donkey so that you can ride on its back. You must break the will of someone to be able to oppress and suppress the person. That's why the military strategists called Clausewitz said that war is the imposition of will, your will, on your adversary. If you cannot impose your will on your adversary, you cannot be victorious. So that is why it is very significant for us to understand that peace is a universal phenomenon that we must look at from very specific perspective to understand it and to be able to know what it demands of us to contribute to it. There is this philosopher called Socrates. He was tried and eventually convicted and sentenced to drink hemlock, which is a poison, as a death penalty. He said, there are many means to be able to escape danger if you will say anything and do anything. But he said the difficult thing is not to escape death, but to escape depravity. According to him, it runs faster than death. And because he is old, he will be caught by death. But his judges will be caught by wickedness. And he accepted his sentence that he'll go to death, but his judges will be sentenced to wickedness. So as you perpetrate injustice against another person, you're just exercising power, which is transient. The same thing with Lumumba. When he was being killed, he said, brutality, cruelty, torture will not make him beg for mercy. That he will die with his head unbowed in order to maintain sacred principles. I am showing the willpower of human beings that have enabled us to change society in order to move to the type of society where we say the will and consent of the citizens will determine their manner of government. So we must unite our willpower, all of us, free it in order to build a society that we all own before we can have peace. That is why the League of Nations, after the First World War, saw the brutalities that occurred. Then they agreed that there must be international cooperation so that they will develop certain fundamental principles that will guide them. And they will all agree never to resort to war. But now they must develop certain principles of open society, open relation, just relation among nations. And then to prepare conventions that all of them will respect. So we are seeing the legislative dimension of peace. We are seeing cooperation, the diplomatic dimension of peace. But we are also seeing the willingness, the willingness to have peace. The same thing with the United Nations. When it was coming into being, what they said, they want to save succeeding generation from the suffering that took place after the world wars, 2 world wars. And they agreed that they must now have faith in human beings, in their human rights, in the equality of men and women, of human beings, of nations, small or big. And they must cooperate to have international laws that all of them will respect to have peace in the world. I'll be brief. I am saying that we have ideals of laws, ideals of values, ideals of what is peace. But those ideals will never become reality until we build the type of societies that can guarantee peace. That is the challenge. The type of societies that can guarantee peace must fundamentally emerge from what happened in world history. After the First World War, all the nations began to see that nations must not dominate each other. They must have the right to liberation. And therefore they agreed that the colonial borders of all countries will now serve as the borders of independent nations in the world. And all of them should become part of the United Nations, and they should cooperate to have world peace. But in terms of international aspect of peace, what they created was a Security Council, now with 15 members, 5 permanent members. But those 5 permanent members can have veto powers. Russia is engaged in war in Ukraine, but if you want to take Russia to the United Nations, it will veto whatever the United Nations Security Council does. The same thing with the United States. They will veto. So they have veto powers. So if we are going to promote international peace, that structure must be examined. Structure in such a way that if you are engaged in war, then you should not participate in decision-making that deals with what you are in. Those rules must be established at the level of the United Nations so that the nations that engage in war will have no moral authority to participate in decision-making. If we don't do that, the architecture of peace will still be fragile. And that is the situation in the world today. The architecture is fragile. We can talk a lot about peace, but you've seen what is happening in Gaza. In fact, because I don't have much time, I'll just give you an example where, because of the war in Ukraine and Russia, Germany recently, I was reading, was planning, their health sector was planning how many people will be injured a day if they were engaged in war with Russia. And they say 1,000 people. So they are now building means of evacuating those people. So those people are preparing for war, not peace. They're envisaging war, not peace. So we cannot sit here and talk about abstract concepts of peace. The world is in danger because we do not have a leadership that is committed to peace. And look at Sudan, the fragmentation of the continent. And it is increasing. Coup d'etats are beginning to emerge because of fragile political systems. So peace is not a luxury. It's a matter of life and death. What Mr. Traoré is doing today is to start a conversation. It's the beginning of a conversation, national, continental, and global conversation. We can learn, and that's why the minister must take note, that we must teach people peace. That's what Mr. Traoré is saying. Education is about socialization. It's helping to nurture values. It's not only respecting laws, but just laws must be made and inculcated in human beings. Then they serve as our code of conduct. Code of international conduct for nations, code of conduct for families, code of conduct for countries, code of conduct for institutions. We need code of conduct everywhere. But as he has rightly said, peace must start with education. It has a knowledge base. So fundamentally, the family is the starting point of education. So if you have educated family members, not education being able to read and write, it's being cultured to have values, to know what enhances the development of society. And you inculcate those values in those young people as they grow. So the family has a role to play. But the school is what we call para-parental institution. And the teacher is a para-parent. It's a parent that adds to the value of the family. So the lesson you are learning in the home should be the lesson you are learning in the school. And it goes to feed the larger society, the peer group, and ultimately everywhere we go. So in short, I am commending Mr. Traoré for starting what we often see as very either academic or idealistic. The society that we live in, as long as it's not just poverty, know that there will always be frictions in the homes, frictions in the streets, frictions everywhere. But how do we contain it? Is where Mr. Traoré is emphasizing that we must educate, educate, and educate. And I must recommend that we should also have a peace and reconciliation commission. Because you've had the crisis everywhere. So the ripples are clear. We can ignore them at our own peril. Human rights commissions cannot address those issues. So you need a peace and reconciliation commission where people can approach. If you have land issues, you go there. They start looking at it. So my conclusion is that we cannot address all the problems at the same time. But we can begin the process of addressing them. The first point of call is the education that he says we should start. To know our problem in the first place is half the solution. Thank you.